Yeah, they definitely could. It does not play out the way perhaps you'd usually think, right? There's definitely a little bit more going on with, yeah, this is really, really cool. I cannot get over how much I want to see this version of Terrapagos, Duskwad, Charizard play out. And then, yeah, going up against Regidrago, which we've already seen has put on a ferocious display in multiple ways. So both these players just waiting there to get ready, just to make sure the last few issues are ironed out, so that they can go ahead with their setup, draw their opening 7 cards, and we can get this round 10 feature match rolling.
Excited to get into things here. This is going to be a good one. Now, traditionally, Regidrago is fairly good into Charizard, as it has a great answer to Charizard EX in the form of the Teal Mask Ogerpon. With that being the case, is there maybe, you know, more merit on Pedro's side of trying to just kind of abandon Charizard in terms of attacking and use it more so just to power it up? Is it, you know, worth the risk of putting that Pokemon in play when it's just so easy to be knocked out in return?
But here's the thing, right? So in order for Teal Mask Ogerpon to knock out Charizard easily, it has to have energy on it. So I think exactly like you're saying, if you just use it early on to power up Terrapagos instead, you can attack with that, do a lot of damage, and then later on, if you want to sweep, you know, do big damage with Charizard EX, you can. But in the early game, absolutely, don't put energy on it, don't let the Teal Mask Ogerpon knock it out, just use it to power up the Terrapagos so it can do that unified beatdown for 240 damage instead of the 220 that we're normally used to. So I can't believe that no one's even experimented with this before. This seems really, really clever.
Pedro has definitely cooked. Let's take a look at these prize cards, see if there's anything super relevant. There is that one copy of Squawkabilly EX in the prizes for Otavio. That is always a card that can be very important in bailing you out, giving you some more draw on that first turn. Could definitely be a piece that he misses. Pedro's side, some solid cards, but nothing too relevant, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. There's that one of Jack, it looks like, to Pedro, which could be a little bit annoying, because obviously that's a great supporter to fetch early on. But I think both players can kind of be happy with what they can work with here, as they're both almost there ready to go. This is the Brazilian showdown here for Swiss round 10. Both of these players are currently on 7 wins and 2 ties. So another match point, or another win here, it wouldn't lock things up, but it would put both of these players in great contention for asymmetrical top cut as we kick off our round 10, and it looks like it's going to be Otavio going first.
Otavio going first indeed. Attaches the energy to this Regidrago. Wonder if there's any other way for him to, you know, maybe get to dig through the deck a bit, but nope. Just going to be content with an energy attachment, a pass over the turn, but still a big advantage for Otavio going first, as he'll be able to threaten a lot on his second turn. Yeah, even just getting the energy on is pretty fine, right? Because it means that next turn all you need is, you know, 1 Teal Dance plus a fire attachment plus an energy switch to get it going. So feeling pretty happy with that. But for what it's worth on Pedro's side, we do see the Hoot Hoot start and does have the Buddy Buddy Poffin ready to go as well. So we'll be able to fetch a lot here from the deck and go ahead and grab a Charmander, maybe grab, you know, a Duskull if he wants to, grab that Pidgey, which he does play for that 1/0/1 Pidgeot line. There's like the amount of different sort of low HP evolving bases in this deck is kind of like blowing my mind a little bit. So picking the right 2 here is going to be a bit tricky, but I'm sure he knows exactly how to navigate it. I'm sure one of those Pokemon will definitely be that Fan Rotom. Of course, Fan Call is an excellent ability if Pedro doesn't already have access to that, allowing you to search for 3 colorless Pokemon with 100 HP or less and put them into your hand. Super solid in terms of setting it up, and you're going to always want to use that since this is the only turn that Fan Call is a usable ability. So you see Pedro taking note of what cards are available, what cards are prized. It's always important for these competitors to know what is in the deck and what is not, so they can make the most optimal plays and not make a line that requires them to have a card they don't have.
Yeah, so exactly like you said, Buddy Buddy Poffin going to fetch the Charmander, and yes, indeed, that Fan Rotom. So on the first turn of the game, you can use that Fan Call ability, get 3 Pokemon that are colorless with 100 HP or less from the deck, put them into your hand, so you can go ahead and search a Pidgey here, search a Noctowl so you can evolve into do Dual Seeker next turn, and it's, yeah, really, really strong start. And this Fan Rotom is really what enables these Terrapagos-focused decks with the Noctowl engine to have such great success that they have.
So just deciding what these 3 Pokemon are going to be off of the Fan Call ability. It looks like it is going to be a couple Noctowl and another Hoot Hoot, getting ready to get that Jewel Seeker ability online, albeit it will require one of those Terra Pokemon to be in play. Could be the Charizard, could be the Terrapagos. Sometimes I honestly forget that Charizard is a Terra Pokemon,
yeah.
Even though, of course, it is a Dark type instead.
Yeah, that's the advantage of it, right? You can get the Charizard out to have a Terra Pokemon out, or that Terrapago, so you have the basic option. But yeah, once you're evolved up, you do have the Terra Pokemon in play that way too. So, oh, 2 more Hoothoot going down, and the Manaphy actually. Okay, so yeah, like normally you think, hold on, now I bench locked myself, I can't get a Terra Pokemon out. But if you can rare candy into that Charizard, then you're good to go with the Jewel Seeker still anyway.
Yeah, it does sort of force Pedro into rare candy Charizard to have a potential option in this case to get this Terra Pokemon out. It's a lot easier, right, to just bench something like the Terrapagos. As action starts over on Otavio's side for the second turn. We will see Professor's Research. It does get rid of an energy switch. Those are key cards that Otavio wants to find on this second turn. We'll look at these 7 cards, see what options are available. Looks like did find another energy switch and the Teal Mask Ogre Pond.
With the grass energy as well, yeah.
Start to draw some cards, see what is available. But I don't know if the rest of the hand is quite what he needs to get there. Does have an energy switch and an energy card, but it's not a fire energy that is needed for that Regidrago V-Star to be able to attack.
Yeah, so what I think we're going to see here, if he really values getting the turn 2 Apex Dragon, we do have to see the Ultra Ball in hand. Could go ahead and use the Ultra Ball, grab that Regidrago V-Star and go for the Legacy Star, right? If you want to go super aggressive, just try to get this turn 2 attack. But is it instead going to be attached to the bench Regidrago V and pass?
This is pretty interesting. By leaving this Regidrago V in the active spot, you're still opening yourself up to being knocked out by a Unified Beatdown attack, since the Charizard opens the bench up as long as you have the Stadium card, and a double turbo would mean you have enough damage to take a knockout onto this Regidrago, pending your bench is full. But there's nothing in the hand here for Pedro. Just passing the turn back to Otavio, and now is going to be able to open the floodgates in this matchup, especially knowing his opponent has an extremely poor hand, can play the Ultra Ball, find these Pokemon he needs, and hopefully get this attack on board and put Pedro on essentially a 1-turn clock to stay in this game.
Yeah, so now you definitely know you want to go ahead and go for this aggressive Apex Dragon play, just knowing that your opponent basically did nothing. I mean, if you can pull off a Trifrost here, right, and along with a canceling Cologne onto the Manaphy, like you do that combined play, you're wiping out all the Hoothoot, right? And then at what point? And then it feels like Pedro is going to be completely stuck. Now it is a lot to put together, of course, but the Legacy Star could get you there.
So unfortunately, there is no canceling Cologne in this list. Some Drago players have decided to, opt out of playing that card. However, there is still the potential here. Otavio has stuck with playing this Hawlucha, which has the flying entry ability. When you bench it, you can go ahead and put 1 damage counter on 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon, which in combination with Phantom Dive could knock out something like the Manaphy, like the Hoothoot on the bench. All Otavio needs at this point is just a fire energy off of this Professor's Research, and I think I see an Earthen Vessel there, and that will certainly find it for Otavio, and importantly, can keep his Legacy Star, which he smartly and conservatively did not use last turn.
Yeah, and this is extra smart there from Otavio. Yeah, go ahead and go for the Hawlucha, the flying entry, one of the Charmander, and one of the Manaphy, because now you can go ahead and set up this this Regidrago in the active with the fire energy. You can go to Apex Dragon, copy Phantom Dive, and you can use those 6 damage counters to knock out the Manaphy, and then next turn you can go for a devastating Trifrost.
Yeah, this is an interesting choice here on where to put that other damage counter. Now, by removing one of these Pokemon, of course, it does mean that your opponent's got Noctowl in hand. If they have a Terrapagos they can go ahead and put on the bench, then it puts them in a spot where now all of a sudden the ability's back online. Maybe it could have just been a little bit more conservative to put the other damage counter on something like Fan Rotom that's always going to be just knocked out by a Phantom Dive in the future. However, this play here from Otavio could signal that it might actually just be the Charmander he wants to go after to limit the total amount of damage, and I like this play. Trifrost is a great play down the line, but you don't need to push your aggression too much when you're already taking the first 2 prizes. Knock out the threat, knock out the Pokemon that allows your opponent to get set up, and force them to have other pieces, especially since this is a relatively weird version of Terrapagos. You never know if your opponent is relying super heavily on this Charizard to make their engine go.
Yeah, no, I guess not, right? And it is in the one Charmander out, so it does make sense to take it out as well, and you're not really too worried. It looks like, especially, looks like it's going to be the Fan Rotom promoted for Pedro as he does draw his card. There is an Area 0 Underdepths, but I think there's still no way to get into a Terra Pokemon here.
Yeah, it's a tough promotion either way, right? You're not attacking with any of these Pokemon.
Okay, so that's the Terrapagos now.
So did have a Terrapagos in hand, but of course playing that Charmander down did benchlock Pedro. I wonder if he's considering, was it really worth putting Charmander down for essentially giving my opponent a huge advantage to take the first 2 prizes? However, we'll still get things started off finally using Jewel Seeker. Now that there's a Terra Pokemon in play, can search out 2 trainer cards and get the ball rolling.
Yeah, so the Jewel Seeker effect only works, of course, when you evolve it from a Hoot and there is a Terra Pokemon in play, but does let you search for any 2 trainer cards from the deck. This is the engine that makes these Terrapagos decks really tick, and Pedro making use of it here to also have the extra bonus of consistency for this kind of Charizard package that's been incorporated into this Terrapagos deck. Very, very cool to see as we see the grab there. It looks like it's going to be all the Fortin and the Counter Catcher. Okay.
So interesting here. I wonder if Pedro has the pieces to potentially re-establish a Charizard, and with the second Noctowl in hand, that could be an option, right? If you do have something like Ultra Ball for the Charizard, plus, you know, grabbing rare candy off of something like the Noctowl, you could put this Fan Rotom in the discard pile and switch it out with Thornton. And since it's been in play for a turn, as it, you know, retains all effects on that card, you can go ahead and essentially cheat out a Charizard without having to wait for Charmander to be in play.
And actually, I think the Charizard is already in hand, so this Ultra Ball can fetch a Noctowl. And, oh no, it's not. Okay, I thought, I guess I missaw. But yeah, going to go ahead and go for the Fortin. You can swap out this Fan Rotom, seems like the obvious contender, right? Swap it out there. It has been in play for a turn, so now you can rare candy into that Charizard.
Yeah, notably can also go after the Teal Mask Ogerpon with a Grass Energy already on it. That way, if Otavio wants to respond with a Myriad Leaf Shower to knock the Charizard out, it would require 2 Grass Energy plus an Energy Switch in order to make that happen.
Again, it looks like the Noctowl was the one that was already in hand. So yeah, the pieces are all coming together here. You can find the rare candy, and I guess one other card looks like it's going to be a Nest Ball just to get that last bench slot filled. But that's it. That's all you need, right? You're good to go here now.
You are good to go. You are going to take 2 prizes back, but without, or rather with Legacy Star still not being used, if Otavio is not able to draw into those pieces, it's all but guaranteed at this point. And with Otavio going down to 2 prizes there, it just begs the question, how do you go about the turn after this? Sure, right now you're responding, you're taking a 2-prize knockout, but by losing 2 prizes first to Regidrago and not having, you know, some of those defensive cards in the list that we see commonly with Terrapagos, like the Bouffalante, could it come back to bite Pedro now that he's, you know, climbing up a mountain when there's just so many threats on Otavio's side?
Yeah, that's exactly what Pedro's going to be worried about here, and he's going to try and shore up his defenses as best as possible to mitigate that, and maybe a part of that is going to be that Radiant Charizard that just came down right. It can attack for a very few energy. It can, you can get it to KO a Regidrago V or a Teal Mask Ogerpon very easily, and maybe since it's a 1 prize attack, he can kind of shore up that prize trade a bit better by using the Radiant Charizard.
So Pedro responding in kind, going to have to do everything he can to keep up in this game. Thinking about what to counter Catcher at this point. There is always the world where, you know, you could target down the Regidrago, but I think makes the smart choice here. Getting rid of the biggest threat to Charizard at this point will knock out the Ogerpon with Burning Darkness, taking 2 prizes, and Otavio immediately promoting this Teal Mask Ogerpon. You know that's exactly what he's going to want to attack into this Charizard with this turn.
Yeah, gonna just need to find a Grass Energy, or the V-Star power on the Regidrago V-Star shouldn't be too hard to find, especially if you mix it in with this Pheasant Dipsy that just hit the bench and can draw more cards with its Flip the Script ability.
I'm sure players have been hearing that all weekend. I'll flip the script, I'll flip the script, and I'll flip the script. Just such a powerful way to consistently keep up your aggression, which sort of seems like the opposite of what the card is there, right? As a card that draws you cards when you get knocked out.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? You have to take knockouts to win, so unless you're playing some kind of control variant. So generally speaking, yeah, sure, even it's meant to be like a comeback card, but if your opponent needs to take knockouts anyway, you're going to be drawing cards every single turn, and that's exactly why Pheasant Dipsy makes its way into so many different decks.
So there is Teal Dance number 1. We now see the attachment for turn and does have the energy switch. And this is essentially almost curtains here, it feels like. Of course, there are cards Pedro can play to give himself a better chance in this scenario. But with Legacy Star still not being used, no matter how much Pedro disrupts the hand, Otavio can always just get 2 guaranteed cards, which could be all he needs to close the game out.
Just didn't need it, you know, just had it. Just straight up had it. Wow, this is super, super strong from Otavio because, yeah, you can essentially, like you just said, next turn, you can just lock things up with the Regidrago V-Star, and there's nothing you can do to disrupt this Regidrago V-Star from being able to use its power.
And a professor's research to follow things up can just continuously dig through the deck, find more pieces. Who knows? We could see maybe another Teal Mask Ogre Pawn come down. There's another energy switch. Otavio actually making a smart play I think a lot of players would choose to not do. Talk me through this, Freya. What is the decision-making behind energy switching off of the Regidrago V-Star that's already powered up compared to the one that just had a single grass energy on it?
It's to set up this exactly right here. So you get to a point where you essentially want to set up a couple of different Regidrago V-Stars so that if one gets knocked out, you can still go ahead and use the other one. And yeah, there we go. Pedro recognizing the situation, the door's closing. It is curtains for Pedro as Otavio does take game one.
In convincing fashion, just that one misstep early on of not having a way to use Noctowl. You've seen throughout the stream this weekend how strong Jewel Seeker is, but it's really that second step that we don't talk about of getting that Terra Pokemon in play that allows it to be successful. And that's one of the downsides of, you know, having the Charizard be your main engine instead of going full all in onto Terrapagos. You sometimes have to commit to some more greedy plays, especially going second in a matchup like that. And if it doesn't pay off, you're going to really struggle to come back.
Yeah, which is exactly what we saw in that game one, basically. So I'm sure Pedro will be taking that aside, maybe thinking, you know, I really like getting the Charmander out early if I can, but if that's just going to happen again, maybe I just need to focus on getting my Terrapagos out just so I can go ahead and do those early Jewel Seekers, which are what really makes my deck work in the first place. As yeah, we saw here in this game one, as soon as this Regidrago V-Star came into the active, made use of the Phantom Dive, just taking out the Charmander after that flying entry with the Hawlucha as well. Super strong play from Otavio, and really showing the merit of Hawlucha in this deck, even though a lot of lists have opted not to use it anymore.
And this is the key to winning games with Regidrago. It is point and simple. The longer you save your V-Star power, the higher chance you have of winning. Especially when you saw at the end there, that may have been the convincing factor of benching that Mew. With Mew, Pheasantipity in play, and the Regidrago that hasn't used their V-Star power, it is almost impossible for Otavio to lose that game in that situation. That's just what happens when you let Regidrago run away with these games.
Yeah, and when you build your deck in such a way as well to kind of counter these disruption cards, which are usually so powerful, right? But if you just build your deck to make sure that you have that backup draw power for when you're on a low hand size, you're good to go regardless. So here we are kicking it off in game two, and Pedro will of course be going first, as these Terrapagos and Dusknoir based decks always want to do.
Nest Ball to kick things off, so at minimum can get, of course, the Fan Rotom potentially to get some Pokemon out. Terrapagos, maybe Pedro learning his lessons, saying, you know, I might need to get some more Pokemon that are Terra Pokemon in play before I start to build up and, you know, bench lock myself out. Of course, that Area 0 does extend the bench to 8, but it's only if you have that Terra Pokemon in play first, so you've got to be really careful in setting your board up. A lot of times when you have Dusknoir, it's a little bit more flexible. Now, in this list, there is a thinner line of Dusknoir.
It's like a mini package.
It's like a little package, so that can always work, right? You can put the Duskull down, and if you need the bench space, you can use that Curse Loss ability to open it up.
It's actually a very similar line to what we see in some pure Charizard decks. So you kind of have here the two Duskull, the one Dusclops, which most of the Terrapagos pure variants don't play anymore, and then the one Dusknoir. So a 2-on-1 line just to do that little bit of math fixing. It is the full complement of 4 Hoot-Hoot, but only 3 Noctowl, so really valuing getting those on the bench early, which makes a lot of sense. And then, well, actually one important thing to note on the counts, there are only 2 Area 0 undepths in the list. That's going to be a big one because, of course, normally in the pure Terrapagos variants, you play 3 or even 4. Only having 2 means you need to time them at the exact right moment to make the most of them.
So the choice off the Nest Ball is that Fan Rotom, and Fan Call in turn will be used. We'll definitely see some Hoot-Hoots come down into play. The Pidgey, of course, is in the active spot, so no need to get another Pidgey. And it will, in fact, be the choice of 2 Hoot-Hoots. And actually, interestingly enough, does have the 50 HP Hoot-Hoot. It has a cool ability that prevents your energy cards from being disrupted on your board. Can be a nice way to, you know, give yourself a little bit of a advantage against decks like Iron Thorns potentially, but a lot of people have, you know, favored out of playing that Hoot-Hoot just because having 50 HP right now is just not a great number.
Yeah, funnily enough, because of a card that Pedro himself plays, of course, that Dusclops, the Cursed Blast, does put 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, and that is exactly enough to KO these 50 HP evolving basics, which is also why the 50 HP Pidgey, which would normally be more optimal, hasn't seen play either for similar reasons.
Honestly, it's unoptimal in some cases, not a lot, in some cases. But be honest, you get to play a character art rare. Like, why would you not want to play that? Why would you not want to play the most high rarity version of a card? I mean, that's honestly the biggest selling point for that Hoot-Hoot.
Yeah, I guess you're right. And we do see there the illustration rare Pidgey there in the active. Although I must say, I'm quite fond of the shiny 50 HP Pidgey as well. That one is quite nice.
Nice, but currently out of favor. Otavio will start his turn off with a Nest Ball in kind, and Regidrago V will be the selection. Very standard stuff here for Otavio. Start to threaten the turn 2 Apex Dragon. It is bread and butter with this deck, exactly what you are trying to accomplish game after game. Where things differ is really what attacks you decide to use, how you want to spread your damage counters, but these turn 1s are almost identical depending on no matter what you're playing against.
Yeah, that does really tend to be how it goes. Now, given that Otavio is going second this game, going to be very important to get down multiple Regidrago V. You do not want to be in a situation where you end up with only 1 down, and then if Pedro just has the completely bonkers turn, ends up getting a full bench going with a Terapagos to get a KO onto a Regidrago V. That's not what you want, but it looks like a second Regidrago V drawn off this professor's research, so he's fine.
But no energy cards, and that is definitely the big question at this point of now that there is a, another Nest Ball in the hand. Obviously, if you don't have to play Squawkabilly down, it's not something you'd like to do. There's things like Regidrago, V-Star in the hand, a supporter card for next turn, but I think this is a situation where Otavio might just value having that turn 1 attachment over or putting, a lower HP Pokemon in play, and in kind has to use that Squawk and Seize ability to try and, get his energy full or board full of energy, and will do exactly that as Squawkabilly can come into play as it's not in the prize cards.
Yeah, and this is exactly why you play Squawkabilly, right? You don't necessarily want to use Squawk and Seize ability. It is a liability to get KO'd later on. It is a 2-prize Pokemon that has only 160 HP, but in a situation like this, exactly like you said, you need those energies down. You want to start doing your Teal Dance. You want to start attaching your fires onto your Regidrago. So yeah, even with the massive discard that's happening here, and to be fair, a Dragapult EX and a Kyurem hitting the discard pile is not bad either.
Not bad at all. Did lose a few of those Draw Supporter, 1 Iono, and 1 Professor's Research. But these 6 cards really need to find Otavio some energy cards. And it does find just that.
Yeah, there we go.
Energy, and it looks like an Earthen Vessel, plus some okay cards to discard in this spot. And an interesting sequencing choice here that I like from Otavio. Wants to find as many energies as possible, so he's actually just going to use this Teal Dance before playing the Earthen Vessel. Unfortunately, did not find an energy card, but did find a Cleffa. This could be a spot where Grasping Draw could give the pieces for Otavio to put together a powerful attack, and it looks like Otavio does want to end his turn off in style by using that Cleffa.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. We do see there actually... Oh, hold on. Is he thinking about not playing the Earthen Vessel, maybe?
Could potentially, play this Super Rod from hand first. That could be the consideration, and this is the situation here. So can play the Earthen Vessel and then decide whether or not it's worth playing the Super Rod. And that's really the question here, but I think I like this from Otavio. You can get rid of one of the Super Rod. That's okay. If it means you can keep that Teal Mask Ogre Pawn on the bench instead of having to shuffle it back into your deck and getting this attachment down onto one of your Regidrago on the bench as well.
Yeah, because now you can go ahead, attach the fire to the Regidrago, put that down that second Teal Mask Ogre Pawn EX, make use of one more Teal Dance, and then hopefully play the rest of the hand out to do a really big Grasping Draw. I think that's going to be pretty much the ideal turn for Otavio there.
So Teal Dance number 2 being used. Another card drawn. It is Hawlucha. That can always be a card that's useful later on down the line. And we'll see the Grasping Draw fill the hand up to 7, so 4 cards being drawn as action is back on Pedro. Pedro really needs to have a lot stronger of a turn 2 than he did on game number 1. But it all surrounds the fact of there being no Terra Pokemon in play currently. Do see the glimmer of some of those powerful Stage 2 Pokemon, the Pidgeot EX and the Charizard, but we need Rare Candy for those to function. And be careful there, Pedro. Don't put that Noctowl in play until there's a Terra Pokemon. Smartly, though, and wisely catches himself before he evolves it.
Yeah, well, as long as you catch yourself, right, that's the main thing. Didn't have to consider whether there's a world where you want to get rid of that Temple of Sinnoh as well. There is 1 double turbo energy in the deck. The energy lineup, it's so thin. It's 4 fire and then 1 double turbo energy just to get things going. And it does find off that Ultra Ball, discarding 2 Duskull, actually, it looks like. So, I mean, in the Regidrago matchup, the Duskull maths doesn't really maths that well, so it makes sense to get rid of those now. So yeah, going to Ultra Ball for that Terapagos, and then now, yes, evolve the new Hoot into Noctowl and go for that Jewel Seeker.
And I think it is going to be a candy party here for Pedro. Immediately queues up 2 of those Rare Candy to the top of the deck, really wanting to get both the Charizard and the Pidgeot EX in play, and has the advantage of them both already being there, so no need to search anything out. And now the support line is online for Pedro. He's got the Pidgeot EX, he'll have the Charizard EX, and he has not used Quick Search yet, so this turn is far from over.
Yeah, so there it is, Rare Candy evolving into the Pidgeot, and I don't know if the Charizard was already ready to go in the hand. Oh, it looks like it might be actually, yeah, so I think just debating whether you want to Quick Search first, or whether you want to just go ahead and do this Rare Candy into the Charizard, but no, going to Quick Search first after all. Going to take a decision to see what to go for, and yeah, why not just go for another Noctowl, right? Jewel Seeker number 2, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also technically optimal to Quick Search before playing Charizard if nothing else in your hand is going to change, since it doesn't give Otavio any information about which card you Quick Search for in this case.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
It's a small little thing. It really just depends, though, on what cards Pedro will grab from this second Jewel Seeker ability. So again, any 2 trainer cards that Pedro would like can come to the hand, and immediately the Area 0 Underground is one of them. This is a big turn here for Otavio to potentially, you know, if he can find a Gusting card plus a full bench of Pokemon, there could be a target onto something like the Teal Mask Ogerpon, the Regidrago V on the bench, and then that way Pedro can also find a way to take the first 2 prizes in this matchup. Instead, though, it's going to be Iono and that Area 0, so Pedro may understand that it could be a little bit too much to reach for and may just want to take the 1 prize right now and get these Pokemon into play. Yeah,
alternatively, if you find something to gust off of this Iono that was fetched, you could just go ahead and grab the Squawk ability as well, because even the Charizard can KO that, right? 180 damage base will still be enough. So yeah, he's going to grab the free Fire Energy here, and I think what he attaches to is going to be very telling as to what he thinks the best method of attack is, and it's going to be what a piece on... Oh, okay, so maybe, yeah, like you were saying, take the KO on the Cleffa, but do it with the Fan Rotom for good measure, why not?
Bring up a 1 prize Pokemon, sort of force that awkward-ish prize trade for Otavio. Fan Rotom is always a liability later on in the game if it ever takes 1 damage counter, or even if it doesn't have damage counters on it, thanks to the Hawlucha being in the deck for Otavio. It can always be knocked out on the bench via Phantom Dive. So we'll see both players get their hands shuffled, put on the bottom of the deck, and draw 6 thanks to Iono. Pedro, as of right now, though, will be striking first and taking the first prize card if he chooses to knock out this Cleffa.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think it makes, out of all the things to KO Cleffa with, it definitely makes the most sense. And then you have your Terrapagos and Charizard ready to go with just 1 more fire attachment needed on either one in order to start attacking with them. And there it is. The Assault Landing. Do you need a Stadium in play for it to work? But then it just does 70 damage for 1 color synergy. Not bad at all.
Not bad at all indeed, as Otavio brings up this Regidrago V to start the turn. Again, some important resources. Don't think we've seen any energy switch be played yet. That is going to be a key piece. Otavio needs to find at least 1 of those this turn. Can, of course, manual attach and energy switch away.
I just saw that actually Pedro took a Fire Energy, his last Fire Energy that was in the deck from the prizes. So actually it was a very, very good find from the prize cards there.
Yeah, wow, very interesting for him to, you know, make this play knowing that's the case. Of course, if this Fan Rotom is ever knocked out or can retreat, then of course the energy can get shuffled back in. But it is sort of, you know, some interesting inclusions. Yeah. Only playing 4 Fire Energy. It feels like it keeps going lower and lower with all these Charizard decks over time.
I guess you do have the Night Stretcher, right, which you always search for. So that maybe he felt confident with that, knowing that the Fan Rotom was likely to be KO'd, and so that's why he went for it. But then you just get the Fire Energy off the prizes, and you're good to go anyway. So that's just a bonus.
And Giratina V-Star now hitting the discard pile for Otavio, so that is always a big 1-punch option that exists, especially on a Pokemon like Pidgeot EX that makes Pedro's deck run and function consistently and also gets knocked out via that lost impact due to perfect math.
And found the Prime Catcher as well off of that Flip the Script. So as long as this Regidrago V-Star can get set up, they will be able to take a knockout on this Pidgeot with this Prime Catcher.
We'll see another Teal Dance be used, this time the first of the turn. Putting another energy onto that Teal Mask Ogerpon, and another smart decision here, and really run me through this, is that 1 energy on the Charizard EX instead of placing 2 on there.
Yeah, it's because you want to make sure that you can attack with either one, right? So, because you only need 1 more Fire Energy to attack, why not give yourself the option? And you want to be able to attack with either the Charizard or the Terrapagos, especially given how this damage race might go.
That is true. What I'm thinking more so is it, of course, changes the math that's needed for Myriad Leaf Shower. But usually you need just the 3 energy on, but with there only being 1 Fire Energy on Charizard, you would have to commit a 4th energy, which means you, of course, need to play more energy switch down, play more resources. So it kind of does both of those things for you.
Yeah, it does. I think in this instance, I wasn't considering that as much because, like you mentioned earlier, I think you really want to target down this Pidgeot this turn. Especially if you haven't drawn the Prime Catcher, like you said, without this Pidgeot, this deck kind of like falls apart a little bit, right? So you definitely want to target that down as much as possible.
And there is that first energy switch. It does go on to this Regidrago V-Star, and as long as there's that Prime Catcher, which there is, Pidgeot is an excellent Pokemon to target down this turn, and with the Mew can just bring the Mew up, retreat for free, back into Regidrago, and Lost Impact can take a one-hit knockout onto Pidgeot. The only choice remaining now is what energies from where do you Lost Zone off your Pokemon?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, right? You could, if you're confident that your Regidrago won't get KO'd, then it's pretty easy. You just do the 2 bench ones. But if you're not confident of that, then maybe you could even do it like here, go for both the active, or you can take a middle approach and go 1 from each. I think that would be the way to do it. But it looks like, oh, it's going to be just both from the active.
Yeah,
so
it's tough here because I think with Charizard being the most likely attacker on the following turn, you kind of want to have one grass on both Ogerpons so that they aren't targeted. Yeah. So I think that's the thought process from Otavio. And in the worst case, you can just attack for turn and play another energy switch if you want to attack here. So good choice here from Otavio. Takes the 2 prizes, is now in the lead as action is back on Pedro. Pidgeot out of play. There's no Hoot in play, so Jewel Seeker is not an option, and he's stuck with whatever he has in the hand currently to make something happen.
Yeah, this is a very, very rough spot for Pedro here. Not really left with any options to draw or search any more cards. Did, thankfully, as we already mentioned, get that Fire Energy from the prizes, kind of attach it to the Charizard, but I mean, what do you actually attack into? It's there's a Prime Catcher in the hand, actually, so maybe you just go for the easy 2-price knockout on something here. Maybe, as you mentioned, target down one of those Ogerpon so that at least there's one more Grass Energy knocked off the field.
You could target one of these Ogerpon, but that's why Otavio placed a Grass on each. Wouldn't even need to use another Energy Switch, and it's just so likely that Otavio is going to have 2 Grass Energy with how his deck is built, with how much he is able to search out energy cards every turn. Pedro's really got to think about what's best, but you've got to at least take 2 prizes this turn, and it will be the choice of actually going after Pheasantipity, and that is just the strength, again, of putting the grass on both. Otherwise, Pheasantipity would not be knocked out, but in turn, it would be a little bit more difficult for these Ogerpon to be able to attack on the following turn.
And I do like, given the current board state, I do like the choice of the Pheasantipity. We have seen how strong this card is. Just those 3 extra cards drawn whenever you one of your Pokemon gets knocked out, just can be all the difference between having a comeback turn or from outright losing. So makes complete sense to target this down, just try and minimize the chances of Otavio finding those 2 grass energy to get the counter attack with the Teal Mask Ogerpon.
So Pheasantipity now in the active spot due to Otavio taking 2 prizes. Burning Darkness is dealing enough damage, 180 and 30 more for each prize card taken. But this is really going to be on Otavio. If he can consistently do what he's been doing, hit those check marks every single turn, find what he needs to take 2 prize turns this turn and next, there's really not a lot Pedro can do to take the advantage out of Otavio's court if he can continuously, again, save that Legacy Star. That's going to be the big point to note out on this turn.
He's done it in Game 1, and he's doing it again in Game 2. He's able to find everything he needs without making use of it, and that is so, so strong. Having said that, though, going to Pedro's side, we do see off of that I know that was played right, did actually find a Buddy Buffin, so able to find a Manaphy and a Hoot, and then a Nest Ball as well for good measure. Did it find that Pheasantipity EX, so we'll be able to do a flip the script. And okay, just some questions about the bench arrangement there, just to make it clear what the extra ones are. But yeah, I think that I like this a lot. And then just going to be the knockout after that. Let's see, can Otavio find these 2 grass energy?
2 grass energy indeed. It does also have the second Regidrago on the bench already, so that is solid. We'll see what this hand looks like. There could potentially be a counter stadium that can always, of course, force Pedro to go down and bench some more Pokemon. As of now, though, Otavio is going to take advantage of that extended bench space due to the Area 0, putting that 6 Pokemon into play. And we will also see the energy switch, so this works too. Now all you need is just a Teal Dance ability, and you can place the energy card anywhere else. And this is smart here, playing down the 6th bench Pokemon first. And now that the bench has been removed, both players are going to have to discard 1. And Otavio's definitely got a very easy choice in what he wants to get rid of.
Yeah, you just get rid of that Squawk ability, absolutely. No questions asked. A very, very lovely, smart heads-up play. Making use of the opponent's stadium to your advantage is something that's always really, really good to see.
And the only downside is if Otavio had a way to, you know, maybe get Pheasantipity back in play, that would have obviously been a great ability to use this turn. However, now with the stadium being played down, the bench is locked. So
Yeah.
there are the 2 Regidrago and the 3 Ogerpon. That's it. Here we go. Big restart here. What does Otavio find? And he finds the Earthen Vessel.
There we
That
go.
is excellent. Needed to find some sort of way to continue the turn off, and this is exactly what he needs. As long as there are energy cards left in the deck, he can find the Grass Energy for Teal Dance, and then another energy card to commit as his attachment for turn, possibly onto one of these Regidrago V-Star, as it may want to be his attacker of choice in the following turn.
Yeah, although it looks like the deck is a little bit thin of energy, actually. Thinner than I realized. There's only 1 fire and 1 grass energy left in the entire deck.
Those are going to have to be the 2 choices then. But again, don't count Legacy Star out for naught. It is an ability that can be used later on to grab pieces like those Super Rods that can, put those energy cards back in. We saw 1 get discarded, of course, on that first turn.
We did,
And then
yes.
there is, of course, 1 more available pending. Otavio does not have any in the prize cards. So for now, we'll grab the Grass Energy. Turn's technically not over yet. Of course, there is a 1 card draw from Teal Dance. But again, Otavio's hit everything he needs. From here, cherry on top.
1 card drawn there off the Teal Dance. Restart's already been used. Where does this fire go? I guess go on the other Regidrago riders, but nowhere else where it really makes sense to put it, I think.
Yeah, I think even if this was a Grass Energy, I'd really like it so that the energies would be split between these Regidrago V-Star for the sole purpose of after this Teal Dance, or excuse me, after this Teal Mask Ogerpon takes the knockout on this Charizard, there's really not a lot of use for it as an attacker later on. So your opponent's most likely going to just want to target down something like the Regidrago V-Star.
Yeah.
Hence why it's probably better to split these Pokemon up. So now the question here is, how does Otavio want to go about committing his energies for turn?
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? He's looking for his discard pile right now. I don't know if there was a debate about whether there was an energy attached. We know that there wasn't. Like, he can definitely attach it. Oh, he's actually going to go for the Legacy Star now.
So what is Otavio looking for at this point? We'll go ahead and use the Legacy Star. Take a look and see. Oh, well, this Ogerpon only had the 1 energy on it to begin, so it may have actually just used the Teal Dance. So
yeah, there is
still an attachment left.
Yeah.
I think Otavio may want this Disruption card here, the Iono, since he knows Pedro has a slightly large hand and no access to something like Pidgeot EX. So we'll see the Super Rod go ahead and get played, and this is also due to the fact that Otavio may want to put another Grass Energy into play this turn with Teal Dance so that he can have some to energy switch in the following turns.
Yeah, so this makes that now and then it makes a lot of sense for this to be the turn where you fire off that Legacy Star, find that Iono, find that Super Rod, get the energy back, and then just you can play the Iono, and then you're going to be feeling in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, but to be honest here, the more I think about this, I really wonder if it's worth, disrupting your opponent when you are already in such a commanding spot. I think the biggest concern here, the more I think about this, is a card that we have not talked about yet, and it's that Briar supporter, which is always a concern here for Otavio when you go down. But again, it's in the prize cards here for Pedro, and Otavio does not know that. That is going to be a big missing piece here for Pedro.
Right, because of course the problem here being, of course, you have that Mew EX down, so that's going to be a very easy Briar plus knockout for free prizes. So playing around that as best as he can, but yeah, thankfully for him, he doesn't know that yet. It's in the prize card, so it's not even a worry.
Any Pokemon, right? Going down at 2 prizes, Burning Darkness is going to be dealing a lot of damage. Now, of course, there is no option for that, no Charmander on the bench, but plenty of Pokemon for Terrapagos to take a knockout. So we'll see Otavio disrupt Pedro, put him down to just a 3-card hand here thanks to Iono. Otavio will get 4, and as it stands right now, it seems like Otavio will be able to take these 2 prizes and cross his fingers, all for naught at this point, since there is no Briar available, by taking the knockout on Charizard. And that's really, Briar having a sneaky effect at being able to steal games when it's available.
Yes, and it's very heads up for Otavio to think about that, of course. I mean, maybe you could think to yourself, oh, is there room for the Briar in this? Because, there's so much different things going on, but you have to play around the chance of it, right? I mean, it is a Terra-based deck, and we've seen that, Terrapagos and Charizard are often playing it, so I think it is more than fair to play around it, and, well, in this instance, it won't matter, but I think it would have paid off if the Briar was available.
Yeah, even if the Briar was in the deck, there's still a lot that Pedro needs here. He needs the energy to attack with the Terrapagos, the Stadium to increase the bench. He needs to find the Gusting card as well, and there's only the single Hoot Hoot and Pheasantipity to support him in that endeavor. So we'll see exactly what happens. Pedro will use Flip the Script to draw 3 cards. Let's see the hand draws into 3 essentially useless cards. I mean, the Area 0 is not a terrible one, but as it stands, you could take 2 prizes, but if your opponent can just power up a Regidrago V-Star, the game will be over on the following turn.
Yeah, and it's... I'm actually trying to think if he would have had it if the Briar was in the deck, because I think there is an Ultra Ball there. There's Buddy Poffins. I actually think if Briar was available, he would have had it, you know.
That is true. If there was the stadium and, well, there's the stadium.
Yeah,
and
there's
also
one
had
drew.
The energy card as well. Don't forget that. Drew into the double turbo energy, had that. But I think with this Buddy Puffin, if Pedro didn't already realize it, he's going to get the bad news that Briar is not in the deck. And now we'll have to think about what his option is from here on out.
I guess Charmander would be like one option, right? I mean, if nothing else, you just want to get as many bench Pokemon down as possible so you can do more damage with the Terapagos. That's going to be key, number one, regardless of whether you had Briar or not. But yeah, very unfortunate there that Pedro just, with that pricing of the Briar, missed the opportunity to really steal the game from Otavio here at the end.
Absolutely, and now the question is, if you're not winning the game this turn, right, if you're just committing to taking a knockout onto this Ogre Pawn, what is the best thing you can do in your situation, or in your opinion, Freya, to limit Otavio's chances at winning this game?
Well, I mean, there's no Pheasantipity out, right, so that's something at least. Maybe now, given this situation, I do believe there is at least one Ino left. You can just go ahead and Jewel Seeker, grab an Ino and just disrupt the hand and just hope for the best, because, like we already mentioned, the Legacy V-Star power has been used at this point. So, were it not for that, I think it would be a very different story, because then it would be almost like guaranteed that Pedro could find the pieces. But with it gone, that definitely changes things a lot.
So there is the Jewel Seeker. So 2 trainer cards found for Pedro. There is also an interesting situation here. You see immediately looking at grabbing the counter catcher to go after one of these bench Pokemon, and I have to imagine that may be something like the Mew EX on the bench that could provide maybe a little bit of support, a little bit of
extra
consistency,
draw, yeah.
and some draw here.
Buddy Puffin coming in as well. There's 2 more spots left on the bench. Just going to be the 1 Fan Rotom down. I don't think there's enough other Pokemon left to actually get the bench to the full amount, which is unfortunate, because that means you can't quite get the KO on this Teal Mask Ogerpon because of double turbo. Yeah,
and actually going to go after this Regidrago V-Star. I wonder here if Otavio does have a switch remaining, since Legacy Star was used. We saw Prime Catcher get used early on. So I wonder here now if Pedro could maybe buy himself some time to take a little bit of a slower approach in this game. Maybe go in with the Terapagos, take a big hit into this, and then finish it off with something like Fan Rotom and leave up a 1 prize Pokemon. So let's not count Pedro out of this game yet.
No, not at all. I can absolutely see it. Super Rod, I don't remember if we saw that used or not, because you'd want to get the Fire Energies back into the deck, say if you want to evolve that Charmander that just hit the bench into Charizard to clean up the game from there. But it's going to be a close one no matter what. So we're going to see the retreat into the Terapagos here, and it's going to be a unified beatdown, not for a knockout, but it's going to put a lot of hurt into this Regidrago V-Star.
So just looking through the discard pile, I'm not sure I saw a switch in there, and that is, the big piece that Otavio is going to want to find in this situation. If he can find, a big combination of switch, energy switch, and one of those energy cards, the grass mainly, that were taken off of the prizes, that could be what he needs to close the game out this turn.
So yes, this is going to be 160 damage coming in, I believe. No, 160 is going to be 180.
180 damage.
Or 190 because of double turbo.
Yeah, 190 because of the double turbo energy. And now Pedro, though not able to win the game this turn, does take, a slower route, a little bit more methodical here. Can always make, some cool plays with Thornton and Cursed Blast. There's some things he can do there. But this is Otavio's opening to win the game right here and right now. Let's see the deck. There's actually, I don't think, any energy switch left, and I don't think there's a switch in there either.
Oh, no. Has Pedro just found a way to sneak this win here?
Absolute disaster. That is not what you want to see if you're Otavio, putting that Regidrago V-Star in play. Of course, if it was a V, it would be in the same situation. Yeah, just a Fire Energy, some Grass Energies in the hand, but you can't commit to Teal Dancing those on since you have no energy switch to move. It's just going to be a pass, and let's see if Pedro has what he needs to win the game. There's no Briar, that's the case. But with there being, 1 Duskull at least in the discard pile, if there is a Thornton still, since Otavio is at 2 prizes, Pedro could potentially use a Cursed Blast ability and take the game from there by finishing off one of these bench Pokemon if he's got another way to, gust something up into the active spot.
this is an absolute nail-biter right here at the end of this game 2. We do see the Night Stretcher coming in from Pedro. You can use that to grab any Pokemon or basic energy from your discard pile and put it into your hand, and it's going to eye up that Noctowl. Of course, that Hoot did hit the bench last turn, so can use that to go ahead and use the Jewel Seeker, grab 2 trainers from the deck. I think, is he able to put it together? I think he's thinking about it, you know?
It might be close. Anything is possible with Jewel Seeker. So 2 trainer cards taken out. I wonder, have we seen the Prime Catcher be used yet? There is the Thornton, but the big question here is there one more way to gust a Pokemon out? You can use the Cursed Blast ability, but if it's on anything but this active, it's really going to not have any super solid use in this spot, since something else can come into the active spot, and there's always that fear, right, that there's one more energy switch to be able to get that attack if there's not already 4 in the discard pile.
And it looks like I said, the Thornton is going to be the Rare Candy plus the Super Rod, so there was already a Rare Candy in hand. So interesting that he actually opted to grab a second one here. I guess, does he want to try and set up with the Dusknoir and the Charizard in this turn, maybe? Just to clean things up?
Dusknoir plus Charizard the same turn means that no matter what Otavio sends up, it would be guaranteed knocked out from Charizard. So this might be the read here for Pedro. Go ahead and take this turn to, again, set up, give yourself some time, make this play happen next turn so that you can go Rare Candy Charizard, Rare Candy Dusknoir, take the knockout on the active, and then no matter what gets promoted, as long as it doesn't even matter because of that 3 prizes. So even if a 1-prizer comes up, that's all you need.
Yeah, so this is incredibly smart and heads up from Pedro here. Super Rod shuffles in a Dusknoir and a Duskull, and one other thing I think I missed, it was an energy. Nestball coming in, going to put down that Duskull and set himself up for this win next turn.
Yeah, just have to make sure there's enough Rare Candy left. I think we've only seen... We have seen 2 used, so without Pedro having any prize, has just enough Rare Candy to make this happen. So Pedro managing his resources very well. Will play the Jock, which can grab that Dusknoir that was just shuffled back into the deck. And with there being everything in hand at this point, as long as Pedro has one more turn in this game, one more chance, he will have the pieces he needs to win. He's going to pass things over to Otavio and say, if you've got the pieces here, you can close this game out, but I'm not sure it's there. Just the grass energy, going to attach that to the bench, and I think we may see Pedro be able to navigate this game through.
I think so as well. So he's going to be pass it over after attaching the grass. The draw for Pedro, I think he's got it all right. There's the double Rare Candy.
As long as there's 2 Rare Candy and enough fire energy to be able to knock out this Pokemon, unless there's not enough fire energy. That's the only concern here with this situation.
He did shuffle one in with the Super Rod, I'm fairly sure, but maybe that's the only one in the deck currently, because he did have to get back, of course, the Duskull and the Dusknoir.
Well, let's see this go into play. The first step, though, is that Cursed Blast, and he's going to get to take 2 prizes here, and one of those is going to be the Night Stretcher. Is that what he needed here to figure this out? Doesn't even need it, though. Has the boss's orders in hand, so can bench the Pokemon, play boss's orders onto Mew, and despite not having the Briar, able to find another way to close this game out and tie things up at 1-1.
Wow, Pedro so stealing a victory from the jaws of defeat there right at the end. We saw that Otavio was such a dominant position, but Pedro finding a way to claw it back through this intricate 2-turn setup play. I'm so impressed.
And it's so tough because when you see it from our view, it of course made so much sense to hold on to that Legacy Star V-Star power because the Briar was not in the deck. Of course, Pedro's not going to know that, though. Otavio's not going to know that.
Exactly.
And so it's such a tough situation because you have to play assuming your opponent has the pieces that they have, but that game is completely different there if that V-Star power wasn't used on that turn.
Yeah, so rough when essentially you're kind of in a sense making the correct play, playing around up at your potential loss condition, but it ending up losing you the game because of it. Yeah, well, let's take a look back at that game here. So big KO early on from Otavio as he was able to take out this Pidgeot EX. That was a very big setup stifler in the early stages of the game for sure. And then, but then the Charizard came in and got a few of the attacks going. The response, as you mentioned, setting up the Ogerpon as well to make sure that he could go ahead and take the response KO with the Teal Mask Ogerpon. And then we just, in the reply there at the end, we're just piecing it all together over 2 turns with the Rescued with the Night Stretcher, getting the Dusknoir KO on the active, and then Boss's orders to bring up the Mew to close out the game. Wow.
This is really the trademark of a great player in the Pokemon TCG, finding those alternate win conditions. When one door closes, you have to try to pry the other door open, even if it's going to take, a few kicks to knock that door down. If they're waiting patiently behind and they're giving you time to kick the door down, it works out. It's okay.
Yeah, it sure does. Just, yeah, incredible stuff here. But we will be going into this game 3. Now, this is always a tricky thing, right? Because we're in game 3, not a lot of time left. Maybe one of these players can win quickly, but I mean, given how it's been so far, I mean, it's probably going to be a tie, but not guaranteed. We'll have to see how the rest of this game plays out, but not a lot left on the clock here.
It's never over till it's over. Let's not count that for as a fact. But the big thing to think about as well, both players are at 7-0-2. So, theoretically, if, you know, 30 match points is going to be the cusp for the asymmetrical cut, they could, in theory, afford to take a tie and then win their last 2 matches. It's going to be very, very close. However, we'll see how this game plays out. Not a great starter here for Otavio. Starts this Kyurem in the active spot and will play the Earthen Vessel to find some energy cards. We'll have to see the rest of this hand for Otavio. There's just over 2.5 minutes remaining in this round. Both Super Rod, though, in the prizes for Otavio. Things like the Halucha, also a relevant card in this matchup, and 2 grass energy too, so there will only be 7 energy total, or excuse me, 8 energy total here for Pedro, or excuse me, for Otavio the entirety of the game. There's nothing else in this hand. It's just gonna have to attach to Pheasantipity, and oh boy, if you're Pedro here, you put the gas on right now. You put your pedal to the metal, and you go, because this is a chance for you to close out an extremely fast game. Don't check your prizes. Don't look at anything. Grab the Pokemon, play them down, and just run with it.
Oh, he knows. He knows. We'll check his prizes for him, and honestly, I don't think those prizes matter too much. Again, the double turbo could be a little bit awkward if you want to get a quick attack on Terapagos, I guess, but generally speaking, I think he's going to be okay with these prizes.
Yeah, and just has to finish this turn, honestly, within 1 minute and 40 seconds. I mean, Otavio could literally just draw a pass in return. So hold on here. Let's not count this out as a tie. Pedro still has a great chance to close this game out. Of course, can't use that Unified Beatdown going second. Is just going to go ahead and bench everything, get a count of how many cards are here, and we'll go ahead and see Otavio draw. What does he find? It's a Squawkabilly. That would have been a great card on turn 1, but that's the only other Pokemon. We're getting a Cruel Arrow powered up. What is happening here, Freya?
It's Pokemon, that's what's happening, Ethan, and it looks like this is a draw for turn. It's a Radiant Charizard, but I'm fairly sure that Pedro's got everything to do an insane setup here. The Terapagos is inactive. You have the Noctowl ready to go, the Jewel Seeker. I think you're going to see a KO on this Pheasantipity.
Just needs a full bench, and that Infernal Rain ability from Charizard could knock this Pokemon out with something like Prime Catcher in the hand. As long as Pedro has the resources, there's only 3 Fire Energy in the deck, and that's just enough here. As long as he can find the Evolution Pokemon, and this is going to be everything. The MVP Jock coming in. That can search out the Pidgeot EX and another Noctowl to get all of these pieces. Now, Pedro most likely will not finish this turn before time is called.
But it doesn't matter, right?
But it really depends, though. Well, he's going to be turn 0. So the way that this works out is Pedro would actually only get 2 turns here is the problem. He would get turn 0, turn 2, and that's it. So with how things stand, I think Otavio having the Squawkabilly might be his saving grace, depending on what the rest of Pedro's turn looks like. So we'll get confirmation here that time is called. As things stand, though, Pedro will be turn 0.
Okay. Oh, hold on.
That is a scary ghost. That is a scary ghost.
Yes, this would be the difference maker, because even with the Squawkabilly, if you can get this Duskull evolved into a Dusknoir, you can take out the Kyurem and the Squawkabilly and still steal the game.
We're going to see the Prime Catcher, the retreat for free, and a knockout on Pheasantipity. What do we see? There's a Teal Mask Ogerpon. That doesn't seem like a big draw in theory, but with how things work, Otavio is going to be turn 1. We'll get double confirmation on that. But if that is the case, then I don't know if there's a way for Pedro to take 4 prize cards in the same turn. It would have to require him to do something like Rare Candy, Dusknoir, Thornton, Night Stretcher, Rare Candy, Dusknoir, and then knock out the active Pokemon. So it's not 100% sealed, but it's going to necessarily be tough. We do see the Ogerpon and the Teal Dance, so we can see some more cards get drawn. This is close, despite this being 4 minutes going into this first game.
Yeah, this is so crucial here. We need to get confirmation of what, because sometimes, you know, the clock that we have here on the stream isn't 100% in sync by the second to the timer that the judges have, so we have to make sure, okay, we just got to have the confirmation. This is turn 1 of time. So that means time was called on Pedro's turn.
Okay, so that means Otavio is going to be turn 1. is there a Squawkabilly in the hand? I feel like at this point that everything is going to work, but it looks like we're getting confirmation here that this is how everything works. I think the big issue to think about is, did Otavio draw a card to start things off? And I think that's the discussion that Pedro is having right now, of clarifying who was turn 0, because it makes all the difference here for Pedro. If Pedro had an additional turn to play this game out, if he had 2 turns instead of the turn that just played,
he's fine.
Then he is in a winning position to close this game out.
It all comes down to this, and this is definitely the discussion that's being had. Who knows, like, it's just a few seconds on the clock can make all the difference in the world, just to give that one extra turn that Pedro needs to turn a tie into the win and maybe just to steal this game. I think, yeah, this is the discussion that's happening now. So we'll get confirmation, the players are talking about it, and we're going to get clarification. As soon as we know, we'll let you know, and we'll carry things on.
Whew. Went through a ride there for those last 4 minutes.
Kidding.
I did not expect things to get that out of hand, but that's just the power of drawing well when your opponent is drawing nothing, for that matter. But man, let's not underestimate that Teal Mask Ogre Pawn draw for turn.
Yeah.
100%, as of right now, is the deal breaker between 0 match points and 1 match point for Otavio, and between the difference of a chance at top cut and being knocked out of contention for top cut.
Yeah, no kidding. So look, it looks like the head judge is being called over now, just to really clarify things, because yeah, this is we cannot overstate the importance of what turn time it is. Like we just said, to explain it one more time. If this is turn 0 of time, Pedro will get turn 1, and then it'll be turn 2 for Otavio, and it'll be turn 3, which means that Pedro has 2 turns to take 2 prize knockouts and win the game. As it stands currently, there's a discussion about whether the...
It's turn 0. So as it stands right now, the ruling is that Otavio is currently turn 1.
Okay.
So if that is the case, right, the way that turns of time work is Otavio would get turn 1, Pedro gets turn 2, and then Otavio gets turn 3. So from this point until the match finishes, Pedro would only have 1 more additional turn.
Yeah.
And with the way that this most likely stands, it's going to be really hard for Pedro, with the board that he has now, to take 4 prizes in 1 turn. So that's the big situation here. However, the narrative is completely changed if the situation is different, since 1 more turn means 1 more ability to take a 2 prize knockout, right? That's what this deck wants to do, is to go 2 prize turn after 2 prize turn after 2 prize turn. You miss one of those turns, you miss 2 prizes, and that would result in a completely different game state.
Yeah, and there is basically a debate here, because like you said, the ruling has already been issued, but I guess there was an appeal to the head judge to clarify what's going on, so they're now just reviewing that just to make absolutely sure that that's the establishment that is correct, and that it is Otavio that's turn 1 and not turn 0.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look, those first 2 games were a little bit shaky for this Charizard deck in the beginning.
Yeah, no kidding.
But if you needed any convincing that this deck has power, wow.
Yeah.
That turn was beyond textbook. That turn was almost perfection of what this deck wants to do in testing. I'm sure maybe that when Pedro was playing this deck in testing, trying out this concept, he probably had a turn like that, saw everything happen, and then thought to himself, wait, this deck is broken. Why am I not playing this deck for my event?
And then decided to play the deck for the event.
Exactly.
And then he's on stream around center here at the feature match. But yeah, wow. My personal takeaway from this is that I got to experiment with this version of Charizard to Trap Ghost, because it's funny, because I was talking about it at the start of the match, right? I thought to myself, what would be really, really great if I could use my Terrapagos to easily KO a Raging Bolt EX, because 240 damage, you can hit it with Terrapagos, but usually not when you're playing the double turbo energy, that reduces the damage to 220. But then I was thinking, oh, you can do something with the Glass Trumpet, but then you have a little bit of clunkiness. But Pedro's cracked it. He's like, you know what's a really good basic energy accelerator? Charizard EX. Do you know what's a really great late game attacker? Charizard EX. Do you know where the synergy, because there's already Red Candy in the deck anyway? Charizard EX. It's all there.
I'm just going to say Charizard is the most broken card in all of Scarlet and Violet. I have been saying this since day 1. Burning Darkness is already a ridiculous attack. Grass weakness, especially before Teal Mask Ogre Pawn, the best weakness to have in the game. Yeah. By far. Grass Pokemon were fairly weak.
Yeah, there's no really meta relevant grass decks until Teal Mask Ogre Pawn.
And then on top of that, you have an Excel 3 on Evolve ability. I mean, look, Charizard takes 2 energy. Why does it not Excel 2 for him? Why does it Accelerate 3? It's just so extremely powerful, and you see even how that extra energy makes things flow so much more smoothly, right?
It does, yeah.
Power up your Terrapagos, put the energy on the Charizard, you play around some of the cool math from Teal Mask, right? Your only weakness-based threat in the format, and then next turn just manual attach and you're good.
Yeah, it's and not just in this deck as well, but in general, it makes the flow for Charizard deck so much better because you're not just essentially using the ability to power up itself, like attaching 2 energy. You get that extra 3rd energy, and you can put it wherever you want. You can put it on a Pidgeot if you want to attack with that blustery wind. You can set up a Radiant Charizard. How many times have we seen that before? Setting that up, it's yeah, Infernal Rain, a redonkulous ability.
So we'll wait for everything to get confirmed out. Of course, we're having a discussion currently with the head judge as well as some other judges. We want to make sure everything is cleared out. And honestly, Freya, this decision will define what happens in this game.
Yeah, this decision will be the difference between whether it is a tie and a win. If we're going by the clock that we had on the stream, it is correct as it stands currently. I do believe it went to 0 when it was Pedro's turn. But again, sometimes there's a discrepancy between our stream clock and the clock on the table. So just want to make absolute sure that that we've done it right here.
Whew. That is a lot happening very, very short. I mean, these are the best situations, at least from a viewing perspective. It's you go into game 3 with little time on the clock. You're thinking, oh, this is going to be a draw. And then we get some action. We got to love action. This is what we live for.
Yeah, it absolutely is what we live for, and we see Pedro there just trying to explain the situation, right, from his perspective. And yeah, like you said, this is the difference maker between a potential win and a tie, right? So it makes absolute sense that he wants to, make sure that this is how it plays in his advantage. But he's just trying to explain things from his perspective, right? So yeah, we will see what the final ruling is. But for now, at least, we're just gonna be we're waiting to see what happens and just talking about these 2 decks. Both of these players, I mean.
I just wasn't expected to cool down this quickly. We were right in the heat of the moment, and then this happened. So I'm processing everything. I'm taking a breath right now. Hopefully, viewers at home, of course, whether you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, any of our social media platforms, make sure you guys use that hashtag #PlayPokemon. By the way, share your thoughts on this match. This is by far the most intense game 3 that we've seen through all of this, and it's not intense in terms of back and forth, but it's just the opportunity that sort of presented itself out of nowhere. After, look, if we went into a percentile of who was favored to win this set, the second turn, after the second turn had finished for Otavio, we probably would have been at 85–90% for him to win.
Yeah.
He was doing everything he wanted to. He had saved his V-Star power. He was drawing excellently. And then all of a sudden, Pedro took that game out of nowhere, even after prizing the Briar, found his win condition over the 3 turns of evolving using the Dusknoir, gave himself a berth into a 5-minute game 3, and now all of a sudden is right knocking on the doorstep of give me those 3 match points, let me into being almost towards that top cut with 1 more win.
And the irony, of course, all of that possible because Otavio felt forced to use his Legacy Star V-Star power early to play around the Briar that was actually just prized anyway.
It's so tough. I think 95 out of 100 times you have to make that play.
Yeah.
I think there were too many cards for what I recall. I think like 8 or so cards in hand, and you have Pheasantipity as well to draw cards. It's almost certain at that point, right, that you're going to have access to Briar Countercatcher.
Yeah.
Because that was the play. It was just minus the Briar, right? It was Countercatcher on the other Regidrago, and then that was it. But I do wonder, thinking back onto that turn, if you were losing to a Countercatcher anyways, because we're thinking about the Legacy Star discard, it discarded 2 Iono, the Super Rod, and then a couple of energy cards. I don't think it actually discarded the Switch, and I don't think it discarded the Energy Switch. So if you were going to lose to the Countercatcher regardless of if you used your V-Star power, or you were going to lose the Countercatcher if you used your V-Star power, regardless of if they had Briar or not, would it have just been worth it to save the V-Star power? And that's what I'm going to have to look back on in that game and really think about the resources. Because if it was a loss either way, then it 100% would have been better to hold the pieces and say, look, if you have it, you have it, but I'm going to give myself a guaranteed win next turn.
I guess it was just because, right, if there was a Briar, the win was so simple, right? It was just basically like search the Briar, because I think you could just hit the active, right, and take 3 prizes off of it. So I think that's kind of why he made the calculation there in that regard. But I guess the other way to think about it, though, is more along the lines of even after Iono, right? If the Briar wasn't prized, he still would have been able to put together the turn regardless.
He needs like one of the 2 pieces. He needs to find the Briar or find the Countercatcher off of the 4 cards plus the draw plus the flip the script.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. But I mean, I don't blame Otavio for making that play in the moment, because it's so hard to see the resources a lot of the times with Regidrago. You think to yourself, okay, if my opponent's playing Countercatcher, they're just going to play Countercatcher to close the game out.
Yeah.
Not to stall up the Pokemon, hit it, and then eventually build Dusknoir out of nowhere over the course of however many turns. So it is a really hard play to see, but it can be, right, those really small things that seem, you know, small or sometimes even important in the moment, but it's just one decision. And that's what it can take in Pokemon. One decision can make or break the situation.
So we just had word that currently the head judge is actually reviewing the footage to make the final determination as to whether the time was called. So that's going to be kind of the ultimate call there. And so as soon as he's done reviewing, he's given his ruling, we will know for sure how this game will play out.
This is going to be a big one.
It is.
This is going to be probably the biggest decision here in terms of, you know, judge calls on this stream. We saw a pretty big one in terms of, you know, the match yesterday with Cloth versus Regidrago.
Yes.
That was, you know, a pretty long judge call. So we'll get the action resumed as soon as possible and fill you all in on what ends up happening in this match as the head judge comes back on and gives this deliberation.
Yeah, so it looks like he has reviewed the footage there. We can't quite hear what the judges are saying, but we have like a sort of like lasers letting us know what's going on. So as soon as we know, you'll know. Don't worry, we're not trying to like stall here on purpose. We just want to, you know, keep it. As soon as we want to let you guys know as soon as we can.
I don't think anybody wants to stall in this spot.
No, definitely not.
This is a high action moment for the TCG. This is a big match between two big players. We're going to see exactly what happens. Of course, you know, both players pleading their case and figuring out what the proper situation is. And that is, you know, one of the nice things that we have of being on stream is the ability, right, to review the footage and get clear confirmation of everything that's happening. And we'll see how things play out.
And I don't want to assume too much, but it looks like Pedro is like shaking his head, not feeling very happy here. I think it is confirmation that it is, that Pedro, it's turn 1 of time for Otavio. So with that, door closed, and it looks like it will be a tie because of that.
Yeah, there comes that Squawkabilly down onto the bench as well, and you see Pedro knocking his cards down thinking, is there a way? Also using that Prime Catcher to bring up the Radiant Charizard, and that is very big because there is no copy of Raw Switch in Pedro's list, just has the one copy of Professor Turo to be able to move this Charizard out. And if you're using your supporter for turn on the Charizard, you can't use your supporter for Thornton, and I think that might just be it in itself, even if Pedro had a ridiculous combination of cards.
Wow, so Ultra Ball being played will discard a Super Rod and an Area 0 Under Depth, so the last Area 0 in the deck going to the discard pile. And yeah, I think he's just going to try and look through to see if there is anything, but I don't think that there's any way here. I'm fairly sure this one's going to be a tie.
So what seemed to be was not. What was so close, it's not able to be enough for Pedro here. He's going to go ahead and still grab this Dusknoir, so he can go ahead and, you know, choose to knock out this Kyurem with that Cursed Blast ability, and then if a Pokemon comes up into the active spot, no matter which one, as long as there are 7 Pokemon on the bench, since there's no damage reduction, thanks to there being 2 Fire Energy, Terrapagos can take another knockout as long as there is that Professor Turo in the hand.
Yeah, so Rare Candy into the Dusknoir, Cursed Blast will knock out the Kyurem. 1 prize taken. What's the prize?
Don't know if it necessarily changes a lot, and there is that Turo again. So Professor Turo brings up the, Radiant Charizard to the hand. Terrapagos comes up into the active spot, and we're going to see what looks like the bench be completely filled. A knockout onto this, and the Squawkabilly will come up, the pass will happen, and that is going to be it. It will be a draw between both competitors, so a bit of a sad ending, you know, to what seemed to be an eventful and exciting Game 3. However, have to reiterate again, a tie does keep both of these players in potential contention for top cut. And honestly, with the display that both of these players put on for us, I'd love to see either or both of these players make it to top cut. What a set, Braille, what a set.
Yeah, what a set indeed. Now, actually, there was something else that I was wondering if there could have been a potential for some ridiculous play where you go for like a double Dusknoir with Thornton.
That was the idea, but by Prime Catchering up the Charizard, right, you commit your supporter to the Professor Turo.
Yeah.
But what a set this was. Off to the bat, Otavio dominated in Game 1. It was the quick Regidrago V-Star on the second turn, combined with Pedro having an extremely slow turn to get things set up that allowed Otavio to take reins of the horse and lead himself to a victory, especially with big responses and the Teal Mask Ogerpon, which is not in the deck to attack, being an excellent attacker into the bulky Charizard EX.
Yeah, with that grass weakness, of course, being able to hit with that Myriad Leaf Shower, you know, the free energy plus on the Ogerpon plus the 2 on the Charizard to attack makes the perfect match hit weakness for the knockout, and that's why we often end up seeing that happening the rest of that game, we saw that in game 2, just taking knockout and that Serendipity was the best thing to go for, given that Otavio set up very cleverly with those 2 Ogerpon on the bench, did have the return knockout on the Charizard, and we thought that might be all she wrote, but Pedro, with the insane recovery turn, with Otavio being forced to play around the Briar in his mind, he left the opening for the Legacy Star having been used here, bring up the Mew and just take this, over this 2-turn setup, a crazy comeback play with the counter catcher on the Regidrago V-Star.
And you saw the timer right there, only 5 minutes going into game 3, but Pedro gave himself a fighting chance to close things out. It could have been the difference, 15 seconds could have been the difference between a win and a tie for Pedro. And in the end, it just wasn't enough. He was able to, get down to 1 prize card to finish the game off. The 1 prize card too little. It will be a tie. Both players still undefeated at 7-0-3, but plenty of work still to do. They're going to need to win at least their last 2 rounds to have a chance at making that asymmetrical top cut.
Yeah, and we don't even know fully what the cutoff it will be at the end yet. It's the way it works with the asymmetrical cut is it's kind of similar to how in the past you would bubble in or bubble out depending on your opponent's win percentage. So as long as your win record is as good as someone who did make the top 8, you're in top cut, and that's when we get the asymmetrical rounds.
Going to be really interesting to see. Of course, we are at a field of about 1,500 players going into this event. We've seen sort of some numbers in events where the cut is clean. A lot of times there have been bigger bubbles. I think the most we've seen is about, 2 play-in matches at one of the Europe regionals a month or so back. So that was the most recent example. But sometimes, it could be nice and clean. It's going to be pretty hard to know if there's going to be 8 players, though, at 10, 1-1 or better. If there's just one,